Have you ever wondered if your thoughts are truly your own, or if someone else planted them there without your knowledge? Maybe you've convinced yourself you're too smart to fall for it, but that's exactly how psychological manipulation thrives. At its core, manipulation is about quietly shaping another person's perception or behavior for someone else's benefit, usually at your expense. It preys on human vulnerability, especially our desires, fears, insecurities, and our desperate need to belong or to be accepted. Society itself is built around this vulnerability, quietly reinforcing the illusion that you're in control, while subtly guiding your decisions. Dark psychology understands one bitter truth. Humans are predictable, easily influenced, and often blind to their own chains. Your emotions, pride, and even your rational mind can be weaponized against you. Those who practice manipulation know exactly how to exploit these weaknesses, using techniques that twist reality, distort your sense of self, and break down your defenses so smoothly that you never see it coming until it's too late. Philosophy, too, exposes a grim reality behind manipulation. From a philosophical point of view, free will itself can be questioned. How free are you really, when your choices have already been quietly influenced, if not outright controlled, by external forces? Dark philosophers suggest that society doesn't exist to free you, but rather to mold you into an obedient participant who thinks and acts within carefully drawn lines. In short, manipulation isn't just something done by individuals, it's woven deeply into the very fabric of society itself. And the uncomfortable truth is this: recognizing it might be far easier than escaping it. If you're going to break free, you first need to clearly understand the traps you're caught in. The truth might feel grim, but awareness can give you an edge, a faint hope amid the shadows. Manipulation is subtle and patient. It relies heavily on methods that erode your perception, slowly reshaping your sense of reality. One of its darkest tools is gaslighting, a technique that systematically dismantles your trust in your own memory, emotions, and sanity. You begin doubting yourself so deeply that eventually, you rely solely on the manipulator's distorted version of truth. Fear is another powerful instrument. Fear immobilizes. It silences critical thinking and reduces even the strongest minds into obedient followers. Fear of isolation, humiliation, or loss often coerces people to surrender their independence quietly. But fear loses power once you begin to see it clearly for what it is, a mechanism designed specifically to keep you subdued. Emotional blackmail follows closely behind, twisting your own feelings against you. Guilt, obligation, and shame are used like chains, convincing you that you're responsible for someone else's happiness or misery. You're manipulated not through force but through compassion, loyalty, and a misplaced sense of responsibility. Lastly, social conformity is perhaps the most insidious tactic. Humans naturally crave acceptance and fear exclusion. Society exploits this innate desire, forcing individuals to suppress their genuine beliefs and instincts. Conformity promises safety, belonging, and comfort, but only if you give up the truth of who you truly are. Yet, as dark as these methods are, recognizing them offers a glimmer of hope. Understanding the tactics won't immediately set you free, but it does provide a small, meaningful step toward reclaiming your mind. Knowing what controls you is the first and perhaps most crucial victory against manipulation. If manipulation is the invisible force that shapes your decisions and guides your beliefs, philosophy is the grim mirror that forces you to confront just how deep the deception runs. Philosophers have long warned us about the illusion of freedom and truth, but the warnings often fell on deaf ears. Plato, thousands of years ago, described humanity's condition in his famous allegory of the cave. Imagine people imprisoned deep underground, chained so that they can only face a blank wall, seeing nothing but shadows cast by puppeteers behind them. These prisoners accept the shadows as their reality, never questioning or understanding that what they see is nothing but a carefully crafted illusion. According to Plato, this is your life, a mere shadow show of half-truths, distortions, and carefully constructed narratives. Your beliefs, your ideals, your entire understanding of the world might be shadows projected onto a wall by those who profit from your ignorance. But Plato is not alone in painting a dark picture of human freedom. Nietzsche argued that life itself is an endless struggle of power. Those who master manipulation inevitably dominate those who fail to recognize its influence. To Nietzsche, manipulation isn't accidental, it's fundamental. It's the very language of power. He viewed morality and conventional ideas of good and evil as convenient tools used by the powerful to control and direct the masses. What you believe to be right or moral may simply be a cleverly disguised attempt to keep you docile, compliant, and unaware. And if you think education or knowledge will set you free, Michel Foucault offers another cold reality. Foucault saw knowledge itself as a weapon, one wielded by institutions, governments, and authorities to control how you perceive reality. To him, the ones who control information and define what is true don't simply describe the world, they shape and govern your entire experience. Schools, hospitals, media outlets, even experts you trust, all hold invisible power over your life, subtly dictating your choices by defining what's normal, acceptable, and correct. These philosophical perspectives paint a picture darker than most want to acknowledge. Freedom may be nothing more than a comforting illusion, carefully maintained by those who understand your mind better than you do yourself. Your thoughts, actions, beliefs, even your sense of individuality, might just be the product of clever psychological engineering, refined over generations. Philosophy shows clearly that manipulation is not just the work of sinister individuals, it's embedded in the very structure of human society. And this reality is bleak. To truly see manipulation means confronting the uncomfortable truth that perhaps your life was never entirely yours to begin with. The bitter irony about manipulation is that you're often the last person to realize it's happening to you. By the time suspicion creeps in, you may already be tangled in a web that's far too complex to easily escape. Recognition is your only lifeline, and perhaps your only defense. You might believe you have a solid grasp of reality, trusting your judgment and instincts, but manipulators specialize in undermining exactly that trust. They understand how to exploit your confidence, your doubts, your fears, your very identity. So, how do you detect a force whose primary power lies in invisibility? Begin by noticing your own discomfort. Manipulation is rarely overt. Instead, it feels subtle, almost natural, like a persistent anxiety you can't quite pinpoint. You might sense unease when watching the news, scrolling social media, or interacting with friends, partners, or colleagues. Pay close attention. This vague feeling of something being off is often your subconscious recognizing attempts to distort your perception. In media and politics, manipulation thrives openly yet silently. Headlines aren't just headlines. They are carefully chosen emotional triggers designed to provoke fear, anger, or conformity. Every narrative is constructed with an agenda, and you're constantly steered toward a predetermined conclusion. The news is never neutral. It's always shaping you, influencing you, nudging you slowly toward acceptance of someone else's reality. Relationships, too, are breeding grounds for subtle control. A partner, friend, or even family member may wield emotional guilt, disguised criticism, or calculated praise to mold you into someone easier to manage. You might rationalize it, convincing yourself their intentions are good. But slowly, you find your sense of self weakening, replaced by their expectations and judgments. The scary part, you might even become grateful for their control. Notice patterns. Are you regularly doubting your own thoughts, memories, or feelings? Do you feel compelled to justify or apologize excessively, even when you're not wrong? These are red flags, signs that your perception is being deliberately altered, your autonomy quietly eroded. Yet recognition itself isn't straightforward. Your mind, clouded by manipulation, will resist clarity. You're wired to trust others, to rely on external validation, and manipulators understand this perfectly. They count on your blindness, your compliance, your unwillingness to question the narrative. So, if you're starting to sense the uncomfortable truth, that perhaps your mind is not fully your own, you may already be ahead of most people. But recognition is only the first uncomfortable step. The hardest truths are yet to come. To clearly see through the veil, to understand exactly how manipulation shapes your daily decisions and relationships, you need insights beyond surface-level awareness. You need to confront the dark realities that most prefer to avoid. Subscribe, keep listening, keep questioning, because only by confronting the shadows can you truly begin the painful but necessary journey toward reclaiming yourself. If understanding manipulation felt unsettling, attempting to resist it may prove even darker. The truth is, resistance itself can feel exhausting, like a solitary battle against an endless wave of deception. But despite the difficulty, you might find that resistance, even in small doses, gives you something priceless, a faint sense of control. Resistance begins with skepticism. But skepticism isn't easy. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths. You have to accept that much of what you've believed, perhaps your entire life, was never truly yours. Questioning everything means becoming distrustful, not just of others, but of yourself. It demands you acknowledge that your perceptions have often been distorted or entirely wrong. This realization can feel isolating, even painful. But without skepticism, your mind remains fertile ground for manipulation. Stoicism provides another weapon against psychological manipulation, though it comes at a cost. It teaches emotional detachment, reminding you that emotions can be used as weapons against you. Stoics argue that happiness, fear, anger, and sadness should never control you, but mastering your emotions requires continuous, exhausting vigilance. Stoicism forces you into emotional self-denial, stripping away comfort and false security, leaving you face to face with the harsh, unfiltered reality of life. Critical thinking offers additional protection, but this too is daunting. To think critically means never fully relaxing into belief. You must constantly challenge every piece of information, every argument, every motive. Life becomes an endless struggle against complacency, no rest, no relief. Yet critical thinking also grants clarity, allowing glimpses into truths that others refuse to see or admit. Setting clear boundaries can help guard your autonomy, though these boundaries often come with conflict. Manipulators rarely respect personal limits. They respond to your newfound resistance with guilt, accusations, or rejection. Establishing boundaries can isolate you, revealing uncomfortable truths about those closest to you, that perhaps their affection and respect were always conditional upon your compliance. Each strategy for resistance carries its own darkness. Skepticism isolates you. Stoicism demands emotional sacrifice. Critical thinking exhausts you. Boundaries can push people away. The reality of resisting manipulation is this: true independence often feels cold, lonely, and demanding. But this is the harsh trade-off if you truly want your mind to remain your own. If you've made it this far, you're likely starting to realize a troubling truth. True freedom might never fully exist. Autonomy, authenticity, individuality. These are powerful words, comforting ideals you've chased, yet they are often just illusions within a much darker reality. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that manipulation isn't something you escape entirely. It's something you learn to navigate, endure, or merely survive. Existential philosophers remind us that freedom itself is a heavy burden. To embrace personal freedom means accepting isolation, responsibility, and a profound, unending uncertainty. Authenticity sounds noble, even empowering, but in practice, it often leaves you feeling alone, misunderstood, and disconnected. Society rewards conformity, not authenticity, compliance, not independence. If you choose to live authentically, you must also accept the loneliness that comes from breaking free of society's comforting, manipulative embrace. Even vigilance itself becomes exhausting. Constantly staying aware, challenging every assumption, and doubting every intention, it's draining. Eventually, you'll question if it's worth the fight, if perhaps ignorance was easier, simpler. And maybe it was. Freedom, after all, isn't comforting. It doesn't promise happiness or peace. Instead, it promises clarity, a painful clarity that few people truly want. But perhaps that's the darkest truth of all. Deep down, most people prefer comfortable illusions to uncomfortable realities. Manipulation thrives precisely because facing the truth is often unbearable. You may break free from one illusion only to realize you're caught in another, trapped in a never-ending cycle of awareness, skepticism, and existential dread. Yet, here you are, still listening, still hoping that something can change. Is there a meaningful way to reclaim personal freedom, or is the effort itself just another manipulation, an illusion you tell yourself to cope with the reality of powerlessness? Maybe the entire concept of personal freedom is fundamentally flawed, a romantic myth we cling to, because admitting the alternative is too painful. Can you truly ever escape the manipulation woven deeply into the fabric of society itself? Comment below. Do you think genuine freedom actually exists, or are we forever trapped in layers of manipulation we can't fully escape?